Hey everybody, welcome on into the ClayShare studio. We have got a fun live wheel throwing basics tutorial planned for you this evening. So I do have an intro to wheel throwing class on ClayShare that is free, mind you, free, as is this broadcast. So if you want more of a teacher-student kind of approach and not a live broadcast where we have a lot of chit chat and comments and everything, you might want to check that out after you watch this, of course, right? So we're going to be live here on ClayShare, on the ClayShare apps, on YouTube, on Vimeo, on my Instagram, and on Facebook. So I think I covered all that. And we're just going to talk about throwing. And then in prime time for my premium members, we're going to make some really fun composite pots. We're going to be making lots of pots and sticking them together. So that's going to be happening. So the pin racks behind me. Do you know that I have pins that don't even fit in the racks because we have so many different designs? They don't all fit. But yes, pins. That's quite a topic of conversation, which we've talked about a lot this week. So let's make some pots. All right, so wheel throwing. I know I teach a lot of hand building classes on ClayShare, and most of our ClayShare members are hand builders. But you may not know that I started out as a wheel thrower. I didn't hand build at all unless I absolutely had to. Hand building's hard. Hand building, you got to practice a lot to get good at it. Wheel throwing, although it's challenging to center, once you get that down, it's pretty easy, believe it or not. So I was a wheel thrower for like 10 years. Before I got into hand building. And I did production pottery that way for many years and made more pots than in those 10 years than I'll probably make in the rest of my life, I think, if we do the math. Yeah, I think we'd find that to be true. So we're going to I want to talk about the basics. And a lot of folks, when you're starting out, although I said it's easier than hand building, but in fact, wheel throwing is challenging, and it's a skill you have to practice and work at. So I want to give you some tips to start you off on the right foot or the right hand, since we're throwing. And the first thing I'm going to tell you, yes, you can throw on a wheel that's not level, but you will be much happier if your wheel is level. So here I have my handy dandy little level. It has a magnetic strip on it, so it sticks on my slab roller when I'm not using it, so I know where it lives on the slab roller. But you want to measure, but you want to check for level your wheel side to side and front to back. Now your wheel legs might be adjustable, and if that's the case, you adjust them where you need to. If the legs are not adjustable, you can get shims or little pieces of wood, or I've folded up paper in the past, whatever you can get. But you really want to get your wheel level just because it'll make it easier. Can you throw on wheels that are not level? Absolutely. I've done it many times, but it's just one of those little things that it'll make it easier for you. If you're having trouble centering, it could be the reason why. It's not the only reason why, but it could be one of the reasons why. Now, the other thing is your body posture and how you're sitting. So the way that I'm sitting here is I have my hips almost even with the top of the wheel head, or in this case, the bat, because I'm throwing on a bat. And for me, that works the best. I like to keep my back nice and straight, keep my elbows in. When I lean into the pots to throw, I don't fold my shoulders and hunch down in. No, you keep your back nice and straight and you just lean your body in. So you just kind of lean in. Now, a lot of folks like to throw standing up, and I think that's great if you have back issues. That's a good thing to explore, and you definitely should do that. For me, I haven't had any troubles throwing sitting yet. But, you know, hey, I've got years ahead of me to develop back problems, so maybe I'll be standing at some point. I don't know. But right now I'm sitting, and I found that this works great. Now, as far as your legs positioned to the floor, you want to keep your knees at about a 90-degree angle here. You don't want to have a strain by having your legs down and you can't touch the floor. So what do? You put something under the foot pedal to raise the foot up, like a brick. A kiln brick would work, or just regular brick, and something on the other side so that you're balanced, so both your legs can be up and you can have good posture that way. right? So those are just some good things to keep in mind. Good posture. You won't hurt your back so much, and it'll be easier to throw, and you'll also have a stronger foundation for when you're throwing, so your body will be more stable. So body mechanics is something I talk about in the class. Now, the other thing that makes a huge difference when you are throwing is clay. And a lot of times, students will try to throw with clay that's really hard. When you're starting out, find the softest clay you can, just till you get it down. Once you have centering and throwing down, you can use clay that's stiff and hard. It's harder on your hands and it's more difficult to work with, but it'll work. This happens to be Laguna B-Mix 5, and straight out of the bag after I've wedged it a little bit, it's really nice and pliable. You know, I can squeeze it. I can see that my thumb is making nice, easy indents in it. I don't have to push super hard. And that's what we want. So this is it's a good way to go. Any tips for a standing kick wheel? I have a kick wheel that sits, not standing. So my suggestion is, just like if you're sitting, you need to stay grounded. A friend of mine has her standing wheel set up against a wooden beam behind her back. So she can lean up against the beam and use the beam to support her as she's working. So with a kick wheel, that might work as well. You have something behind you to support you, like the beam, right? You can also make some kind of a seat backer sort of thing, like with a board, and put some carpet or something on it so that it's not so hard, but mount that behind you, and, you know, while you're kicking. But if you've ever used a kick wheel before, which I'm assuming you have if you have a standing kick wheel, it's the same thing. You know, you're kicking, you're kicking, you're kicking, you get your wheel going, and then use your hand movements. You know, eventually you get to the point where you can kick and pull at the same time without messing yourself up. But when your leg is doing this, when your leg's kicking like that, and your hands are trying to stay locked in nice and steady and not messing your pot up, it takes a lot of practice. So you got to get used to having a leg doing something different than your upper body. So you divide your body in half. I will do some kick wheel classes when I get my kick wheel moved from the other studio up to here. So we'll do some kick wheel stuff if you guys really want that. I love my kick wheel, so. To wake up the clay, right. And, you know, dropping your clay, your bag of clay, can help wake it up. Not all clay can be woken up. I'm talking about not in the bag fresh clay, but when you go to a clay center and they recycle their clay and they have little balls of clay already wedged up, or recycled clay that's in a bucket they expect you to use. A lot of times that clay cannot be woken up. It's too hard. It doesn't have the moisture in it to wake up. So you can wake your clay up by dropping it, absolutely. You can wedge it a bit. I usually smack mine a bit, like this. So I'll cut off the amount I'm going to use, and I'll kind of smack it a little bit, and then I'll cut my pieces up that I'm going to be using for that day. But you just want to make your clay as soft as possible so that it's not going to be a struggle for you to center it. All right. So standing kick wheel, you'd be doing more falling than piling. Yeah, I have a sitting kick wheel and I love it, but I've never done a standing one, so that's maybe more than I would want to handle myself. All right, so throwing basics, right? So we got a lump of clay. This is about 2 pounds of clay. When you're starting out, I recommend you don't do larger than 2 pounds. Once you get this down, go as big as you want. But starting out, 1 pound, 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, whatever you're comfortable working with is a good place to start. You know, you don't need to try to throw big that first time you're on the wheel. That's just silly. All right, so I smack this down into the center, and I'm going to turn my wheel on, right? And then we're going to do what's called smacking on center, which is what I call it, where we just use our palms and we smack the clay kind of down and towards the center, making a little like volcano shape. So this is doing a couple things. It's seating the clay on either the wheel or bat that you're using, and it's starting to center it for us a little bit. So it's already doing a little bit of the work for us. So there we have it. Now I'm using a bat And you don't have to throw on a bat. You can throw directly on your wheel head if you like. It's up to you. Everybody's got different preferences. I'm a big fan of bats. I have a whole bunch of them. And that's left over from making lots of big plates and platters on the wheel and not wanting to cut and then try to move a plate. You try to move a 12-inch plate off of a wheel without warping it when it's soaking wet. You can't. You have to use a bat. So that's why I use bats. All right, let's go ahead and get our clay wet. So the board I'm using, the bat that I'm using right now, lots of questions. So the bat I'm using is called a Hydra bat, and I got it from High Water Clays. It's a thick bat. I've had this one for about 18 years, and it's obviously still good because I'm still using it. Once we finish throwing the pot, we do release the clay with a wire, and then we let it sit on the board, and we take this off and sit on a shelf. All right, let's get our clay wet. So we just start with it wet, and see, it's definitely not on center. And I'm just going to start, and I'm going to press down a little bit. Mostly doing this just to make sure I've seated the clay on the wheel head correctly, so I don't have to worry about it flying off. It's definitely off, though, isn't it? So you struggle with throwing with hard clay, you learn the hard way. Yes, so if you learn to throw with hard clay, you'll be very strong, you know, and when you throw a soft clay, it'll be very easy for you. But I'm not saying that people should learn that way. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to cone up. So we make a cone, and then the opposite is cone down, and I'll go into this in a little more detail. I do in the class have a bunch of tips for you guys. You might want to remember to check that out. All right, so coning up, the way I do it. The base of my palm on my right hand and a little bit up on the outside is really pushing in here. My elbow is up against my side, right? And my arm, my elbow on the other side's in on my left. And I'm basically using the whole bottom half of my hand. And this is resisting a bit as this one's pushing in. So they're coming together and we're coning up. And that's how I cone up. And so we're coming together and we're coning up. And as it gets skinnier, I just leave my left hand on there, and the left hand does the coning up because there's no room for two hands. And then to press it down, you use the meaty part of the base of your thumb, and you're going to let that ride along there. And this is going to do most of the work, but I'm going to put my fingers atop my thumb, these 4 fingers here, atop the, I guess, the other side of the palm, meaty part of my palm, my thumb. And I'm just going to use this as a brace to, 1, give a good strong foundation, and 2, this hand is going to help resist as we press downward, making a little cake. So we make a cone when we cone up, and when we press down, we make a little cake. Some people call it a beehive. I call it a cake. You tried to throw with porcelain the first time? That's not good. Don't throw with porcelain. Porcelain is like throwing with cream cheese. First time out, it's difficult. It's difficult. I'm not saying you can't do it, but you're going to really set yourself up for a challenge. All right, so you get your clay into that cake, and I think it's easiest for students to make a bowl. Clay always tries to become a bowl anyways. So I start them with bowls. Now when I was learning, we weren't allowed to make bowls first. We had to make cylinders, and we didn't keep a single cylinder. We cut them all in half after each one we made, and we laid them on a board, and my professor looked at them and then said, yep, make more. And we did that for about 2 weeks every day. So we didn't keep pots. Although in our free time, we did sneak back into the studio and make pots, and I did keep some of them. She didn't want me keeping pots because she told me those pots would be horrible and I would hate to have them later in life. And I'm going to tell you, they are horrible. And I do hate having them. No, I got some good glazes on them, so I don't hate them. And my children thought they were great, so they actually have them. All right, so yes, this is about 2 pounds. Why is porcelain so difficult? Because porcelain is a clay that becomes oversaturated with water. It becomes exhausted really quickly. So 1, it's already very soft. It doesn't have a lot of grog or tooth in it to hold itself up. It doesn't have a stiff body, which is we call clay's bodies, right? And once you put too much water on porcelain, it becomes exhausted and basically it just falls apart. And when it's too wet, you can't work with it. You just got to sit it to the side, let it dry out a bit, and then work again with it. So stoneware is your best way to start. What kind of wheel do I have? This is a Bailey Pro XL. So let's open this up. So I'm just going to let my left hand rest on the little cake of clay. My fingers just riding around. I got it wet. Thumb is finding the middle, and we're just going to make a little depression. So that's marking our center for us. And then I take the two fingers that are on my right hand. Now I'm a right-handed person. So if you're left-handed, you might want to actually do things the opposite of what I'm doing. And so these two fingers are basically going to press my thumb down. And you see how my other thumb up here bracing? So every time I make movements, every time I do something, I have my hands connected as much as I can. This is giving strength to all my motions. It's preventing these wibbly wobbly things from happening and stuff. It's keeping everything where it should be. All right, so you get to the point where your thumb can't go down anymore, so then use one of your fingers and then you pull back. So go down. I was glazing and I have black underglaze all under my nails, so if you can see it, well, that's potter's hands for you. Because glazing, today was not a great glazing day. I dropped a brand new jar of glaze and spilt it everywhere. Found a pot that I was glazing, a beautiful big platter that I had bumped when it was drying, and I thought it was okay, but it turned out it cracked where I bumped it. It just, you know, days. Anyhow, back to the throwing. So we're just compressing the bottom here, and now we're going to open up. Now for a bowl, you can make two kinds of bottoms. We can make a bottom that's flat and then goes up. That's more of a cylinder style bottom. Or we can do a slight curve. And for bowls, I like to do a little curve, but you don't have to. If you're starting out with bowls and you're struggling with that curve, you can go ahead and do the flat bottom bowl. So for a curve, we're just going to pull back, and as we pull back, we just let our hands come up a little bit. So you're going to have a lot of clay left over on the bottom of a bowl that you will trim away later when you do a curved bottom. Do I open up off the center point? I do, yes. Yep. You just start pulling backwards right off the center. So now we're going to compress down. So some people call this setting the bottom. You can call it shaping the bottom, and I'm just using my fingers to do it. See, we're just going down in. And it makes little throw marks in there. If you want to use a rib, you could do that. And so you put your rib in and compress and go down towards the center. You can use a silicone rib like this, or a metal rib, or a wooden rib, whatever you want to use. So now we have the bottom set, right? So that's how the bottom's going to be. We're really not going to do anything else to the bottom until we trim it. There's nothing else to do. You've been throwing almost every day for 2 years, and you do not understand how to make identical forms. You weigh it to help a bit, but not exactly. Could I explain? So you will develop over time muscle memory for certain shapes, but measuring will be your friend. If you're trying to make something the same size every time, I do suggest you use a ruler and calipers. These things right here. So if you're going to make cups that are 1.25 pounds, maybe they're mugs, every time you make it, you're going to throw it to a certain height and a certain width, and you're going to make that shape, and you're going to practice getting that same shape every time, and you're just going to keep at it, and you will eventually get it, but it's a lot of practice to get there, but you will. Now they do make some really cool measuring tools that I've seen. I think they're Korean actually, but they mount on your wheel and it will measure height and width for you, and you can like pull it in and put it up against your piece and see if it's the right size. I've never used them, but they look like they'd be really handy. All right, so let's go ahead and pull up this wall. It's pretty thick. This wall, this is a chunky wall. I mean, we're definitely a good inch thick. So let's start pulling, and I'm just going to slow the wheel down a bit. I'm pinching, and you'll notice I am using the sponge. I'll put the sponge down so maybe you can see a little easier. Using my finger, the side of my index finger on the outside of the pot, and then the side of my index finger on the inside, but I also will switch to my middle and index finger, kind of flatten them out like this on the inside. And this is how I usually pull up. I use the sides of my fingers. Some people like to use the ends of their fingers or the flats, like you flatten them out. There's no right way to throw. It's just how it works for you. So hand positionings, it just depends on you. All right, so I have my inside and outside hands almost even with each other as far as where they're placed on the bowl. And then we'll compress. So compressing a rim is just pinching the sides and then resting your finger on the top as the wheel spins. And that compresses this nicely. And you want to do that because it helps hold the shape. So if you're ever throwing and you have it collapse on you, it could be it's exhausted, but compressing it can help prevent that. How thick do I trim my bottoms to? About 1/4? I don't know, usually a little less, not quite 1/8. A little thicker than that. But it does depend on how thick I'm making the actual bowl. So if I'm throwing a big bowl, a really big bowl, I might have a thicker bottom than if I'm throwing a thinner bowl. So it just really depends what I'm making. This size bowl here, it's 2 pounds isn't quite a ramen bowl. It's a little tinier than a ramen bowl. For me, 2 1/4 pounds to 2 1/2 pounds would be a good ramen bowl. Yeah, but this here is a little. Now, if you want to use a rib, ribs are great for shaping. You know, you just press against the rib. I'm holding the rib against the pot. And I'm actually going to make one that it's kind of a half and half pot because I'm going to make the bottom really nice and refined. And then we'll put a lot of throw marks in the top so it has a bit of character to it. So in here, right here, I'm just pushing against the inside of the bowl to give it shape. And I'm just holding the rib here, and the rib's just hanging out. See? And then for the top bit, I'm just going to use my fingers. Get it a little wetter. If you're ever throwing a bowl and it just collapses on you, it means it just flattens itself out and goes bleh, like that. That's because you exhausted the clay. And you got it too wet. And it happens. All right, now we're going to compress our rim. But I'm doing it instead of flat, I'm just kind of rolling my finger over the sides to round the sides. And that's this bowl. This will be a nice small serving bowl or a big like cereal bowl. Now there's a lot of clay on the bottom, but we leave that there and we'll trim all that away after it's dried, usually the next day for me. You're making ramen right now. So have I used the mug profile? Sherry, this is the first time I've thrown since, what was the last thing I threw? We did the carved lamps, the carved luminaries. Do you remember we did that? So was that January? I have not thrown since January. Yeah, I know. So no, I haven't, I'm sorry, Rich, I haven't had a chance to use the ribs you sent me because this is the first day I'm on the wheel. Right now. And I've got so many things to do. I don't know. I've got a wheel throwing class we're in the middle of filming, but I haven't done the throwing part. Well, not for, I'm not going to explain it. But anyhow, not the live throwing part. It's already been the done throwing. Okay, so there's our bowl, and I'll bring it to the side so you guys can see. We got folks on Insta can see, folks at home. There's the inside so you can see that curve. And then if you look down here, you'll see we'll have to trim a bunch of this away. But that's all right. We expect to do that. All right, and put those over to the side. Oh, and do another. Let's trim another. I'll use a different bat every time tonight. I don't know where this bat came from, but it warped a little. So this is the thing about bats. I could go on a tangent about bats. Here's one I did some sodium silicate with, so it's got some of that still stuck to it. But this bat is from the batch that I bought like 18, 19 years ago. And they didn't warp at all. They're amazing. And they are pricey and, you know, all that. This bat, it's about half the thickness. And it's good, but it does warp. Like it's cupped right now, I can see. So it's like a bowl almost. And it's okay. I can still work with it, but I don't love it. And so I don't usually reach for it. These guys here, I mean, they just go. I think I have 10 of them. And they were, I don't remember how much, like $12, $13 18 years ago. So I don't know what they are these days. But they were so worth it when I got it. The other ones here, hold on. I'm on a bat hunt. These from Studio Pro bats, the, what is this? Is this a 8-sided bat? Is this one? This has been good. I haven't had the cupping or warping with these guys. So let's use this one. And I know there's a lot of people out there who don't use bats. You don't need to use a bat. Most things you can make in pottery, especially when you're starting out, you don't need a bat. You can just work directly on the wheel head. But a bat is nice, isn't it? I think it's nice. I don't think it matters which side we use. It's just Studio Pro bats. They're right here in Vermont. And we do a lot of work with them. All right. Oh, and the thing under my bat was a little bat mat that I did a class. It's very simple. It's just shelf liner that I showed you guys how to cut. It's not even a class. It's just a little quickie tutorial thing. So, all right. So you need this more than you can say. Adding to the library to rewatch over and over. Good. Yeah, throwing basics is, you can never have too many of the basics. All right, so let's grab another ball of clay that's also about 2 pounds. We did a bowl. Let's do a cylinder form now, because there's different things, and we did cylinders. That was the last thing I think I did throw, was those. And when you're working, you notice I've got a bag, you probably don't see this off to the side. I've got this. You know, I find that you don't want to leave your balls of clay sitting out so that they can harden on you while you're waiting to use them. So keep them covered. And I'm gonna get these folks on Instagram. I'm gonna get you closer so you can see the pottery happenings. There we go. All right, they're in. At the end, when I compressed the rim, I rolled it a little with my thumb. I didn't roll it over as far as like bending the clay over, but I just let my finger roll down the side and smoothed it over. Yeah, I rounded it so that, I mean, I didn't roll it and make like a hollow rim. I just rolled my finger down it like that. So it rounded that rim a bit so it's nice and soft instead of a sharp flat edge, which you can do a sharp flat edge if you want to. But yeah, I just rounded it over. Have we not done rolled rims? I'm pretty sure we've done rolled rims. If we haven't, by golly, we need to. All right, so same thing we've done, you know, we smacking it on center and everything and get it going. What kind of question is that about? No, it's a very valid question to using the profile ribs of riches. Actually, I mean, just so you all don't think that I'm not, look, they have a place of honor right here next to my wheel. Look how clean they are. I just haven't had a chance. I put them over here and it's like I will the next time I get a chance to make some mugs or forms that are tall and skinny, maybe some cups, but I just haven't. Where did I get my racks? So my rolling pin racks were made by Rich McNatt. Woodworks by Rich. I don't know, Rich, are you making rolling pin racks anymore? All right, so we're going to do the same thing as we did with the first one. We coned up, we pressed it down, brought it back down, turned it into a little cake, right? And now we're going to make a cylinder form. So when we opened the bowl form, we did that little rounded bottom. And if you want more bowls, I have a wheel thrown medium-sized bowl. I have a wheel thrown berry bowl class. Berry bowls can also be colanders. So if you want to make a wheel thrown colander or berry bowl, check that class out. It also, we do handles and everything in that class, so that's got a lot happening in there. All right, finding our center again. And then we're just going to press down. So if you're not sure how thick your bottom is, you can use a needle tool to gauge it, and I'll show you in just a second. So now we're going to open this up a little differently. We're just going to pull back. So our hands are going to go like this. So you're trying to buy a used Brent CXC. What would I expect to pay for something like that wheel? Used CXC would be probably like $800, I would see. Depends on how used it is. New, I think they sell for $13, $14. I don't know the current market value. I do have a friend who's selling a kiln. If anybody wants a kiln, it's a big kiln though, like huge. How many cubic feet is that kiln? Do you remember, Kev?
What's that?
The kiln that Roger's selling. I'll put pictures of it. He sent me the information on it, and I told him I would share with you guys. It normally sells, he paid like $8,000 for it. So it's a big kiln. So anybody wants a big kiln that can come pick it up here in Vermont, let me know. All right, so I'm just compressing the bottom. Oh, I'm going to show you. That's right, we talked about that. I'm going to show you how to measure your bottom's thickness, right? So you're going to take a needle tool and get it kind of dirty. See how dirty it is? And then you're going to stab it in till it's too dirty. Don't get it that dirty. Less dirty. You stab it in, you can see where it's clean to. See? Right there. Can you guys see that? I don't know if that's picking up. So I know that my bottom is about a 1/4 inch thick. Let's see. A little tiny bit less than a 1/4 inch thick. A little bit less. It's good. All right, so now we just compress it again to get rid of the holes you made. Those holes will not be a problem. They don't cause cracks. They're just tiny little pinholes. We just compress them down in and they're gone. But now we know that the bottom is a nice thickness, and we can work with that. I showed you a rolled rim years ago. Oh, Christina remembers. See? This is why I love you all, because I can't remember anymore. Like, my brain has reached capacity, I think. So we're just compressing, and I'm pressing in with my outer hand. I've got my outer hand lower than my inside hand as I'm pulling up. And when we're making cylinders, or anything that starts with a cylinder shape, you want to get all your height in before you start adding any volume or shape to the form. Once you start adding that volume and shape to the form, you won't get any more height out of it. And I like to tell people, when we're pulling up, you don't actually want to pull straight up. If you pull straight up, what's going to happen is centrifugal force is going to kind of force it out, so you're going to make more like a bowl shape. This is what I was saying earlier, everything wants to be a bowl. It's trying to throw it out. So we're going to pretend there's an invisible string hanging in the center, and as we're pulling up, you're trying to pull towards that string. Not so much that you actually close the form in, but thinking about that as we're pulling up, you're going to pull up as a gentle diagonal inward, but what actually is going to happen is you're just going to get a slight inward shape, and that's what you want. The other thing you want to do is you want to remove excess water that's sitting on the inside of your piece as you're working. I see so many pictures of people's pots who've cracked on the bottom, and a lot of that is due to water that's just been left sitting in the pot. Whether it sat too long while it was being made on the wheel, or whether afterwards it was made and there was moisture in there, the person didn't wipe it out. All right, so this was again about 2 pounds. I think this was 1.93 pounds. So technically it's not 2 pounds, but it's pretty close, right? See me compress? So we're talking about compressing just flat. If I was rounding it, I'd bring my finger down. You want a big kiln for sculptures, but driving to Vermont is problematic. Right? Yeah. I don't know if he would deliver it. If it's not so far. I have to ask him. Yeah, if someone wants a big kiln for sculptures, this is a oval kiln. It's a Bailey. It's in great shape. Yeah? Oh, you're in Florida. They have a place in Florida, but I don't know if they'd be bringing the kiln. But you know what? Maybe. I mean, why not? It's his kiln to figure out how to get it to whoever buys it, right? Not mine. I don't have to worry about that. All right. So here you go. We've got a cylinder, and it's a pretty good size cylinder. We could try to see if we can pull up one more pull and get a little more height out of it. It's pretty even thickness. Now, if I make it too thin, I won't have a lot of material to add volume with. You know, if we make a really skinny, like skinny wall cylinder, it's great. It's nice and thin, but you have no clay to press out with, so you cannot put any volume on it, which is disappointing, right? So keep that in mind when you're working. If you make your piece too thin, how do you expect to add volume to it? Maybe we were doing collared in pieces the last time I threw. Can't even remember. All right, so this is my last pull for height. Usually I do 3. Compress that in. And I like to keep my rim the thickness of my wall, so I can see when I look at this that my wall is about this thick, which I bet if we measure, it's about a 1/4 inch, which is what my floor is, which is what we want. We want to try to keep our sides and our bottoms even thickness. All right, now we can make something with this. What do you guys want? I got a cylinder. Tell me, I can make a vase with it. Oh, the wheel speeds is a very good question. So when you're centering, your clay, you're going to go much faster than when you're pulling up. You're actually going to go really pretty slow when we're pulling up, and even slower when we're shaping, because we don't want to throw it off center, and we also don't want to pull the clay, right? And also, when you're touching your clay, you always want to touch the clay, kind of go in a little gently. You never just kind of grab it. And when you let go, it's the same thing. Just gently let go and take your hands off the clay. If you pull your hands off quickly, sometimes you can pull the lip of the pot and knock it off center that way too. A jug. We'll make a jug. Sure, this will work for a jug. All right, so since we're going to do a jug, we got to make sure that we don't have any water down on the inside, because we're going to close this in a bit. I won't be able to get back inside when we do the top. All right. So since I know it's going to be a jug, I'm going to automatically just start collaring in 1/3 of the way up from, 1/3 of the way down from the top. I'm going to start collaring it in. And we're not going to collar it in so small that I can't get my hands in it. So you'll do the same thing. Don't make it so small you cannot get your hands in it. But we need to start pushing this clay inward, since it's going to become much smaller. It's almost like a little milk canister at this point, right? Little milk bottle. Well, could make a milk bottle. So Jane knows somebody that it's an electric kiln. Yeah. All right, I'm going to press out at the bottom on the inside to shape. I'm going to slow the wheel down a bit. Now, another thing about speeds is you want your hands to move, and this is going to sound crazy, but you want your hands to move at the same speed as your wheel is spinning. So if your wheel is going really fast, your hands need to move faster. If they don't move fast enough, they will stay in the same place too long, making that clay thinner, and then you'll have an uneven pot. So I'm going to press out on the bottom again just a little bit. And when we were making the height, remember I didn't want to thin it down too much because I didn't want to not have material there to be able to shape it. All right, so I'm going to use this rib, this wooden rib. The wooden ribs give me more resistance. The silicone, I always want to call them rubber, but they're silicone, are more pliable and you can bend them and everything. But if you want a really sharp, straight side, a wooden rib's a nice thing to push against because you can get that sharp, straight side. And I know not everybody uses ribs. I love them. I've always used them. When I started throwing, I immediately gravitated to the ribs. I like how they smooth the sides. I like how we can use them to shape our pots. All right, so we have got a nice body of a jug right here. Let's take this rib to smooth it. Do you see the difference that's happening here? With the silicone ribs, I can really smooth that side. And the wooden ribs usually leave a little bit of a line behind, but it's not a problem, it's just what they do. All right, now we're going to go ahead, compress this, and we'll color in the top. If you plan to do things like jugs and you're going to be coloring it in, you want to work pretty quickly. Your clay is going to be absorbing a lot of water, and if it absorbs too much and becomes exhausted, you're not going to be able to color it in. It'll just kind of smush on you. So if you've ever been coloring in and you've been working a while at the piece and you go to do it and it just smushes, it's not really your fault. It's the clay. So don't blame yourself. Don't be hard on yourself about it. It's the clay's fault. All right, we're getting this wet on the outside. We're going to color it in. Made it too thin on the shoulder. Yep. That's the volume, right? So this is going to be a wide-mouthed jug. Because here, and you can see it. See right there? I stretched the clay because I didn't plan to put that big shoulder in, but we can save the pot and save it. If you want to see some great jugs, check out the Carolinas folk pottery for some jugs that are amazing. They actually have a place called Jugtown, and they have a place called Seagrove. And Seagrove is probably, I think, the pottery capital of the U.S. There are so many potters in that area that have been there for generations. If you want to take a little trip, you know, and you're looking for some place to go check out a bunch of potters, I'd definitely go to Seagrove. So a thing to think about is when we're going to make a form, we have to plan on what we're doing. So if I had thought about making the jug, I would have left it a little thicker, but it's not that bad. I mean, you can try to, oh, nope, it's going to go again. All right, what time is it? Do I have time to throw another? 5:44. We'll see. We can try it. This is just going to be a great vase, that's all. All right, so I'm just folding this rim over onto the rib a bit. It's a nice vase, but it's not a jug. So let's make a jug. Let me clean up the bottom. We'll cut this off, and then let's see if we can do a jug quickly. A friend of yours went on her first pottery lesson, and she was explaining what she did. She told me that the tutor gave her a liver to smooth the clay out. I don't know. You mean like actual liver? Like, no, you don't mean that, do you? Do you? Mm-hmm. All right, we're gonna go with this one. I mean, chamois, I use chamois. A lot of times, some people use plastic to smooth the edges of a pot. For many years, I used chamois, and you put it on a bobber, a fishing bobber, in your water so you don't lose it. Or if you could get plastic film canisters, little for 35 millimeter film, if you can still get them. All right, so this is bigger. This is 2 1/3 pounds of clay is this ball that I got here. So we're gonna make a bigger jug. But now that it's a jug, I'm gonna make it a little different from the beginning, right? So let's go ahead and smack it on center. Do you see how fast I'm going when I'm centering? I go much, much faster when I center. I think it makes it easier to do, the centering process. All right, this will work. Let's find our center. Open up our pot. And so this is going to be a flat bottom piece, right? Most people don't put a curved bottom in a jug. Not that you couldn't, you can make it kind of fancy, right? Like a curved bowl bottom jug. All right, so there's our bottom end. Kidney. She means a kidney. You can use your rib to smooth it, yes. If that's what we're talking about. Sometimes they call ribs a kidney. Sometimes we call ribs a liver. Oh, so she said liver meaning kidney. I get the joke now. Okay. Some ribs are shaped kind of like a kidney. So I'm making this a little bit smaller at the top to start with, right? I'm setting myself up for the shape I'm going to make. So it's a different shape. This is already a smaller diameter, significantly smaller actually, than what I had started with last time. And so that means the clay's thickness and everything, it's where it needs to be. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and slow the wheel down. I'm going to do one slow pull up, just checking the thickness as I do this. Okay. All right, so there's our height established on 2 and about 1/3 pounds of clay. Because we left the walls thick enough to volume it out. Let's see how tall we got so you guys know. We are at 8 inches, just about 8 inches. All right. So for a jug, you don't have to make it bulbous. You can make it straight-sided if you want. I mean, these are all the things you're going to decide when you're making it. I need to get a rib though. There we go. If your clay is getting too wet on you when you're working, a rib can scrape some of that moisture off. And it actually compresses the clay as we're working with it. The rib does. So it helps it hold its shape. All right, let's do this. Did we do a jug class? I know I've got a pitcher class. I don't know if I've got a jug class. I don't think I do. Of course, I could totally be wrong. They'll be like, ah, yeah, you got one. Let's give it a little volume in its body. I'm going to switch to my... I'm going to be throwing in prime time for my premium members, so we're going to be doing more throwing today. Today's throwers extravaganza. It's all about throwing. All right, now, this would be a great vase shape too. We're not making a vase though. I did it again. Wow. The jug that won't be. Is my clay getting too wet? Maybe. So if you're doing this and you're struggling, what can you do to fix it? Well, you can get a different clay body. This is B-Mix, which is porcelainous. We were talking about porcelain absorbing moisture really easily and how it's a really soft clay, which is a great clay to work with, but this one's doing some like funky stuff on me, isn't it? It's like, you won't make a jug, lady. It does not want to be a jug. So, what do you do at this point, right? Once you get it shaped, I mean, we can make all kinds of things. It doesn't look like a jug's going to happen, though. You guys know I have made plenty of skinny-necked bottles, but tonight, you know what? This is the first time throwing with the new B-Mix. I've never thrown with that before. I wonder if that has anything to do with it. Anybody out there use the new B-Mix? Have you found it wants to collapse easier on you? I just grabbed it. I didn't even think about it being a problem. All right, so this could be a wide mouth jug. Isn't really what I would do. Not really. But it's just not going to work. So we're going to... okay, so what lesson do we have from this? When things aren't working out, yes, you keep trying, but sometimes you don't fight it, right? You just make whatever's working, and then you try the next day. So now I have a little project for myself to make a jug. Because it doesn't want to work tonight, and I am not going to have time to do it. Maybe in prime time, if we make our composite pieces and get them all done, we can do a jug together. But anybody with that new B-Mix? So the new B-Mix seems softer to you, and attachments need more attention. Used it last month and it was really soft for throwing. It deals with moisture differently than the old B-Mix, everybody's saying. So it's not me feeling like, wow, did I forget to throw, you know? So I'm just going to let this sit, and actually I'm going to come back and work on it once it's sat up a little bit. I want to do some more things to it, but it's too wet. It's just way too wet. We're talking about clay being exhausted. I have got some Tucker's Mid-Smooth Stone Spec Clay. I think I'm going to throw with some of that later, and we'll get that going. So you've only used the new B-Mix for hand building. You haven't thrown it, but I saved it. I did save it. I saved it. It's saved. Here, what do we got? Rich gave me this profile rib. I'm going to see if I can use that for the foot. Let me prep it a little bit. I've only been throwing for 22 years, so I don't really know what I'm doing. Some days, and some clays and things just do what they do. So we're going to press this cool rib in for my foot. I don't think it's meant to do that, but Rich, I mean, on this shape, right? But it worked nicely. I don't know if you all can see my foot that I just put on there. See, I used it and I got it all messy, so I'm going to wire it off so I don't forget. And then, do you guys want to close up on the side camera, or you got it? How do I know it's the new B-Mix? It's a different color, Heidi. Yeah, the new B-Mix is a totally different color than the old B-Mix. It's more tan. And I could tell because when I went and bought it, I'll show everybody it. When I went to buy it, my supplier was like, oh, we got the new B-Mix in. And I was all out of old B-Mix. So all I have now is new. I don't have anything else. So I know that's what I'm using. There's no way I could be using the wrong clay because I'm out of it. Yeah. So for me, it's easy to tell, but it might not be so if you've got a bunch. But you like this shape. Yeah. That's a good shape. I don't know. I'll hold it like that. So it's very traditional vase shape. If I might come back in and do a little more work on it down here, maybe shape it a little. I might just leave it be. It looks good. It looks good the way it is, so there might not be any reason to mess with it at all, right? There might not be any need to mess with it. So let's see, any other questions? I hope this helped. These are just, just some of the basics. Like I said, everybody throws differently. Everybody has, different ways of holding their hands, different ways of holding their body, of their posture, how high or low they like their wheel. And those are all things you just have to figure out over time as you work. And you'll find what works for you, right? And I still change things up sometimes. See if there's anything else. No. All right. So we are going to be doing a private broadcast for premium members where we're going to make a composite form, multi-parts. We're going to be making them and adding them together. No jugs, although you could make a jug and add parts to a jug, right? Why not? All right, everyone, thanks for joining me here. We are gonna end this, and you can catch the replay in about an hour, and it'll be available for free, so you guys can go back and watch me not make a jug multiple